Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where they're, I think, clearly the best group of five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league's about.
Time for another FunBelt podcast. It is that time of the week. We are excited to be back. A quarter has come and gone, right? We have week 4 in the books. So there's stuff and things that have happened, gents. We have a winner chicken dinner over there with Dusty Thibodeau. He's an excited fella. I know that. And there was a coaching change. Like, what just happened, boys? How we doing? From HowRazor.com, of course, Jeremy Harper and Dusty Thibodeau of the Warhawk Report. Fellas, it's been bananas, and it's been a month.
Yeah, we got like a quarterback put into the ICU. We've got a coach get fired, and it all seemed to happen within the 5 hours of each other. We've had
Players car surfing and chugging beers. It's mayhem.
Yeah. That's just we've had controversial calls from the SEC that may have cost the Sun Belt a nice feather in its cap. So,
Jeremy, hand Ben a Kleenex. If you're going to bring that up, hand him a Kleenex.
I might just ship him a box of Kleenexes because he has every right to be upset with that call. Now, here's the thing. I always thought of blaming the refs as sort of a loser's mentality. Part of the game is the refs are going to make mistakes, and part of the game plan has to be to overcome that, right? But if there was one missed call that really did affect the outcome of a game, it was that game. That was an atrocious call made by those refs in the Auburn Georgia State game. And it really cost not just Georgia State, but the entire Sun Belt a really good win there. And that was just a damn shame.
Yeah, it was tough, and being live, seeing it happen. I'll always look at the reaction of the crowd, right? You want to say, all right, so you have obviously the visiting fans that are there. They want the call. They wanted to go their own way. You look at the home call, and they replayed it a total of 2 times on the jumbo board there in Jordan Hare, and they had the one angle, and the other angle was like, oh, like it was like a collective like. Yeah, that didn't happen. You can see the ball bounce. The call actually before it, too, on the sidelines, the wide receiver kind of tried to do the toe tap. Didn't he have it? Did he not? Some of the Georgia State coaching staff was looking for that. Only 8 flags thrown the entire game. Both coaches were not super thrilled with that. Obviously, Coach Elliott was super upset with that specific call. It did move it from basically the 30-yard line to just outside the 10. The Panthers just weren't able to do that. But truthfully, there were several different plays in that game. The Panthers were trying to salt the game away. Had the ball 2nd and 11, little flare pass to their senior running back Destin Coates, and he gets tripped up by the turf monster. Nobody in front of him, and he falls on the ground. Only gains 3, and the next play, Darren Granger's sacked, and then the Panthers have to punt it away. So there were a lot of mistakes in that game. Ultimately, I think 30 offensive plays for 89 yards for the Panthers in the second half. It's just not good enough to beat an SEC team on the road. It certainly stings. It would have been another big-time marquee Power 5 win for the Sun Belt. And as we know and we've discussed plenty, it seems like almost every single year there seems to be a Sun Belt team beating a Power 5 team in shocking fashion, and the Panthers almost had their shot.
Yeah, and that would have been a nice win. But, yeah, you're right. You did bring up one thing. Georgia State shut out in the second half, and that, of course, contributes to the loss. They had to find a way to score some points, at least, put a little bit of buffer between an Auburn team that probably wasn't going to go down easy. But you got to give credit to that Georgia State defense, and they literally did shut that guy down, shut the Auburn down on 4th down, and still didn't get the call. But congratulations in a moral victory. Oh my God. for Georgia State. I am sorry to call it that.
What are the famous words of Jeremy Harper? FCS mentality.
That is FCS mentality. Oh my God! Well, when you're 1-3 going into the conference play, then you start adopting that FCS mentality.
And it's tough, truly, boys. I mean, the thing about it, ultimately, I mean, we talked about it in August, and we started the looking at the non-conference schedules. I mean, ultimately, the Panthers. I mean, their schedule's been brutal. I mean, the teams are 12-4 combined. Army is undefeated. I was a little surprised, and certainly driving back to Atlanta to see the butt kicking that North Carolina took from Georgia Tech. So that was a little salty. I mean, ultimately, they're really good teams. Charlotte won as well. So the non-conference schedule for the Panthers was been pretty tough, and interested to see what happens. And obviously, we'll get into it with with conference play opening in earnest this weekend.
Ugly as that game was, though, Ben, it was not as ugly as whatever the hell Eastern Michigan plays on.
Yeah, Dusty, I saw that game, or the majority of that game, on the dark sorcery that is ESPN3. And I was really expecting the Bobcats to kind of shake off that sort of embarrassment from getting beat by Incarnate Word. Now, I know that there's still I know they still have some COVID issues, that they still have some depth issues, but getting beat on that god-awful, gross field that Eastern Michigan has. One of my favorite things about the broadcast is that the announcers were talking about the Eastern Michigan's gray field. And they said, there's a real special story about this gray field. And that story is, it's a parking lot. I just was like, oh my, a parking lot, that's the story? Because it's disgusting. It looks like dirty ice. But what was even more disgusting was the way the Texas Bobcats played. They really had nothing. They couldn't wrap up. They couldn't throw. They couldn't run. They couldn't run a defense. Eastern Michigan did whatever they wanted to the Texas State Bobcats. And I really don't know if the Bobcats have anything in their tank to get them through this conference play.
But Brady McBride, 3 touchdowns. But Brady McBride, 3 touchdowns.
Sure.
Jeremy, your Red Wolves, they did everything they could to make the game interesting. They wound up losing by 7 to Tulsa, but they gave up 663 yards to the Hurricane, singular, not singular.
Yeah,
but they had 2 explosive plays that were really the difference to keep the game that close. I don't think the game was that close from what I saw. Johnny Lang, 63-yard punt return. Alan Lamar, 73 yards on a kickoff return. That's 14 of your points right there. So, without special teams, I think that's what you're really looking at on that final score.
Well, that's one way to look at it, but special teams is still part of the game of football. And if you watched the Red Wolves last year, special teams were not very good at all. So it was actually kind of encouraging to Red Wolves fans to see the special teams play so well, not only just scoring points, which is something they used to do regularly, but also making tackles. So that was nice. The defense is obviously not doing well. I think it's ranked out of 130 teams, 130th in the nation. That's just not going to cut it at all. And the offense, they did okay against Tulsa, but James Blackman, the newly minted starting quarterback, a lot of people thought he did pretty well. I saw him overthrow the ball a lot. He made his wide receivers do a lot of jumping, which I think kind of created some bad situations for the wide receivers. And the running game's only getting 1.5 yards a carry. So what Butch Jones said after the game is that the team is very one-dimensional, and that's a bit of an understatement. I don't know how they get out of that. I'm looking forward to seeing this Georgia Southern game.
The one game I did watch was Coastal won. Hooray. They had 30 first downs. Yeah. Okay. And then ULM won again, baby. How great is that? And you know what's even better? I won the money line and the defensive parlay or prop bet. I won them both. And, when I saw the guy get the deflection for the interception, I was like, yeah, he'll get tackled around midfield. Oh, he's at the 40, the 30. you can't cheer in the press box. So inside, I'm just screaming. Meanwhile, I'm going, it's okay, play.
In the press box, Dusty. Come on.
Yeah, you gotta be professional.
I was very professional in the press box, even though I was surrounded by the likes of Adam Prendergast from Troy.
Our guest. Oh, I hope you weren't rude.
Friend of the FunBelt Podcast.
Yeah, well, and while we were watching that Georgia State game in the press box, his feed was about 2 minutes ahead of mine. So he would go, God, and I'd go, I have no idea what's about to happen. Over and over and over again. And I just wanted to like pick up my Mac and throw it at him. But I didn't. It's a professional environment. So we rolled on. Anyway, latest on Rhett Rodriguez. He is supposed to be getting released from the hospital tomorrow on Wednesday. Obviously will not be playing this week as they travel to Coastal Carolina. 34.5-point dogs. I still like that spread. So we're going to see Chandler Rogers. He had some snaps against Kentucky, had some snaps against Jackson State, handful of snaps on Saturday against Troy. But needless to say, you're still breaking in another quarterback. We'll talk about that, though, when we go to the future. Then there was the all hell break loose game. Louisiana Lafayette really had to hold on and keep the Golden Eagles from using the Magic Creek water to win that game. Cajuns 3 of 14 on third down conversions. Levi Lewis doing his thing, 3 passing touchdowns. But the Eagles just didn't have quite enough to really get ahead. They were always playing from behind. And then after the game, the video surfaces of a player smashing beers on the bus. And now we have our first casualty of the Sun Belt Conference coaching carousel. All that to say, we are going to gotta with Matt Mauney. Did I say it right?
No, it's Mauney. It's fine, though.
We got Matt Mauney from GATATalk to give us everything about Georgia Southern. Welcome in, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes, please help us solve all the mysteries surrounding what's happening at Georgia Southern in the last 4 weeks. And maybe talk a little bit, too, about who you expect to see being a coaching candidate at Georgia Southern.
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know if there's that much mystery to it. I mean, obviously, Coach Lunsford in his 4th season was on his, on the hot seat. Obviously, getting fired 4 games in, I don't think most people or fans or experts would have expected that. But as Dusty mentioned, that video surfaced online around midday on Sunday. Certainly following a 28-20 loss to Louisiana, going 0-1 in Sun Belt play, and 1-3 to start the season. That video was pretty much the nail in the coffin. For Lunsford, the team has lacked discipline at times, especially this year, but certainly in the last 4 years under his watch. He's very much a player's coach, a rah-rah guy, a man of high character, of high faith. I mean, no one in Georgia Southern circles are going to say a bad thing about Chad Lunsford, the man. But I think it was becoming increasingly clear that he was kind of losing hold of this program. So I mean, I think if the video hadn't surfaced, he probably would have been given, a bit of a longer leash, probably the next 3 games that I think are winnable games. We think that we obviously had a good chance against Louisiana. You ask, myself and my co-host, I think that we were the better team in that game. I think it was coaching decisions that lost it. We had 4 penalties in the game. And 4 huge penalties. They were all discipline errors. Ironically enough, Gavin Adcock, the player that now is indefinitely suspended, that was seen in the video chugging a beer on top of the moving yellow school bus. He was the culprit in the first big mistake that on, I believe, Louisiana's 4th drive of the game, gave them new life on a 4th and 1, jumping off sides. You just can't do it. So, I mean, it was just terrible optics, terrible look. We also had a leaping penalty, which I don't think you ever see, hardly ever see, of the guy jumping over center on a field goal. Yeah. Held them to a field goal instead. They get new life once again, get a touchdown off of it. So yeah, the 4 penalties directly led to at least 14 points for Louisiana, which was more than the difference in the game. And so fans were stewing over that. Seat was already hot. Then that video surfaces. That's all she wrote.
Matt, tell me a little bit about your interim coach, Kevin Whitley. He's the cornerbacks coach. What kind of experience does he have with the team, and what do you expect out of him?
Yeah, so they say, and I haven't fact checked this, but they say he's the only coach on staff with head coaching experience, albeit in high school. Now, he was a very successful high school coach, had 3 stints at Georgia high schools, turned all 3 of them around, has like a crazy record of like 82-12 or something like that, for what it's worth. But he's an Irk Russell player. He played at Georgia Southern. He knows the traditions. He knows, the decorum and what you should be doing on the yellow school bus and what you shouldn't be doing. I think he's, I don't want to say a no nonsense guy. I think he's still very much a player's coach like Lunsford. But I think you're going to see a more disciplined team. I think, you might not see it immediately, but obviously he's got a long road ahead of him with 2/3 of the season left to play. So I think going down the road, you're going to see a more disciplined, hungry, kind of together team.
Is Whitley a candidate, or is he just sort of filling in?
Not at this point. I mean, I think, we'll see, right? I mean, he hasn't coached the game yet. My co-host and I talked about it on our latest episode that we released today, that, my co-host posed that question of, let's say he gets on a run. Let's say, we're 0-1 in the Sun Belt. We could, highly unlikely, but we could make a run, still win the East, still win the Sun Belt Championship. If that happens, obviously you have to have some tough conversations, right? But we just went through this, with Lunsford. That was an emotional, rash hire after a very, very poor head coaching hire in Tyson Summers. Coach Lunsford was the right guy for that interim job, just like I think Coach Whitley is. But should we have pulled the trigger on him back in 2017 after going 2-4 as the interim, make him the full-time head coach? Of course, we had the huge turnaround going from 10 losses to 10 wins in 2018, biggest turnaround in college football history. But then it kind of tapered off, and we saw what Coach Lunsford could be, and I think that's kind of a mediocre coach, mediocre head coach. So no, I wouldn't jump the gun again. If he ends up just running off a bunch of wins, and we achieve our goals of the Sun Belt, at least East Division title, circle back. But right now, no, I don't think he's going to be really highly considered.
The interesting part to me always, and knowing this state as I do, and as well, Matt, there seems to be kind of an old guard Georgia Southern fandom, and there's kind of the newer guard.
Yeah.
How much have you seen and heard, obviously since Sunday afternoon? Because even the reaction on social media, obviously the players know Lunsford and we're wanting him, and but just even seeing some of the recent players. I know that doesn't always factor with decision makers, but to your point, I mean, this will be an emotional few games moving forward for Kevin Whitley, who I got to know pretty well. He coached Stockbridge High School in Henry County, where I went to school. So I know that area well, and have been to Stockbridge and seen his team play. But what's kind of the push pull here in when December comes? When the season's over, you're looking at it. Who ultimately wins out? Is it the influential boosters, or obviously the younger base and folks who are going to the games and supporting the team that way?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Ben, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that it's been a tug of war for a few years now, but I think biggest thing here is leadership at the top, right? And that starts with the AD. So we had an AD change within last year. Jared Benko, 20 years of experience in the SEC, comes from Mississippi State, was at Auburn for a while, was essentially their CFO of their athletic department, did great things with their budget. He's already done great things. I think got a really good head coach hire for men's basketball. He also, we have $68 million guaranteed now in the works for facility upgrades, including indoor practice facility and a new convocation center, which will be the home to that men's basketball team, as well as women's basketball and volleyball. Those are fundraising efforts that we haven't really seen here in a long time at Georgia Southern. And he obviously is a no nonsense guy, right? I mean, he's everyone likes him, but I think this sent a really loud message that, if things aren't going the right way, he will step in and do something about it, and won't wait around, to see if things get better. So I think that would be my answer to that, with where that old guard, as you say, had a lot of influence with previous athletic directors. And I think you saw that influence in some of these last hires. I don't think that's going to be the case. I really don't. Obviously, money speaks volumes. We do have some big donors in that old guard, but Jared Benko in his press conference on Monday made it clear that, we're looking for a CEO of this football program. We're looking for someone that can run it as a true leader. Primarily, I think this is me speaking of my wish list, but someone with head coaching experience, which probably means FCS. But maybe get someone that lost an opportunity at a bigger school. But I think it's going to be a true national search. And honestly, we didn't have that last time. Obviously, with the Lunsford hire and going back to the Tyson Summers hire. I think if you follow the coaching changes, they all go from the Paul Johnson tree, they all go from the Munkin tree, or associations with Willie Fritz. So you look at all these lists, and even the national media catches on to it. You just see the same retreads, the same names. That's not going to be it. I fully expect a name. It's not going to be a Brian Bohannon. I'd be really surprised. I don't even think it's going to be an option guy. We can get into that. But I think this is going to be, as Benko says, a splash hire, a big hire. I think we're going to pony up money to make it happen to the tune of $1 million plus, to be honest with you.
So you mentioned earlier that the fans were pretty frustrated with a lot of the offensive woes. Mm-hmm. Despite that, the Eagles are still second in the Sun Belt, rushing 233 yards a game. But this defense is really a huge question mark. Their teams are a perfect 12 for 12 in the red zone against Georgia Southern. With you having a defensive guy, though, as your interim head coach, do you think that that's going to help put more emphasis on the defense, or do you think that'll be a bigger distraction and the defense might even actually take a step back?
I don't think they can get any worse. The secondary has been very bad. It's something that we thought was going to be a strong point of the defense coming in. Obviously, you have Derek Canteen, leads the nation in interceptions last year. First time really getting much playing time. He's out for the year. We have had some big injuries already. We lost a stud linebacker and Todd Bradley Glenn before the season even started, and then just lost another linebacker for the year. The defense under Scott Sloan has been kind of the main consistent, I would say, under Lunsford and his tenure. Obviously, we've gone through, two offensive coordinators now with Doug Roos, who was with us under Willie Fritz in 14 and 15. The secondary, they've been burned on many of occasion. Obviously, against Arkansas State, I know they're up, and I don't know if they lead the nation. But Jeremy, I'm sure, can correct me here. but they're up there in passing yards, I think like 368 a game or something like that. Georgia Southern, the secondary, has given up more passing plays of 40 plus yards than anyone in the nation. We're 130 out of 130. So Yeah, it needs a lot of work. To answer your question, I mean, with Whitley there, I don't think it will. I don't know if you'll see a difference. I mean, I think you'll see a difference overall with the play. And this first game, with kind of the hangover of Lunsford being let go, again, the players really liked him. So we'll see what kind of immediate influence, if at all, Whitley has on the team. But I don't think the secondary play can get any worse. The run defense has been okay. I don't think that will matter much against Arkansas State. And frankly, a lot of the Sun Belt, we know we've got to up our pass coverage. So, and we kind of saw this last year too. I'll end with this, that the secondary got burned a lot in the first half of the season and then got things together last year. And obviously Derek Canteen had his big year, like I said. So we'll see with time. I think they will start getting it together. They just haven't been cohesive. They haven't been consistent. They actually made some plays against Louisiana, but then they turn around on the next drive and give up a 55 yard pass for touchdown. So
Matt, first of all, you're right. You're not going to have to worry too much about that Red Wolves defense, whether it's pass or the run. I think we rank 130th in the nation in total defense. So there's really not going to be a whole lot of defense on Saturday when Arkansas State comes to Boone. I was impressed, though, with how the Eagles bottled up that Cajun run game. They had the one score, but they didn't pile up a whole lot of yards. It was mostly the Levi Lewis show. But I didn't want to talk about the Cajun run game or even the defense for Georgia Southern, which is probably a sore point for you anyway. I want to talk about Gerald Green, who seems to have come out of nowhere, piled up 3 touchdowns against the Cajuns. Is he the new bell ringer for the Eagles? Because it's been a little bit of Logan
and Wright.
Yeah. And Logan Wright, yeah. And a little bit of Gerald Green, but now Gerald Green seems like the guy. Is he going to be the guy going forward?
Well, I mean, Logan Wright against Gardner-Webb in the season opener had 170, 180 yards. Gerald Green follows it now with 178 or so yards against Louisiana. We have a loaded backfield. I think most people know that. J.D. King coming off of a leg injury. He led us last year in rushing. It's really, it's a tough situation because we know any of these guys are RB1s, and it's just getting them in the right position, getting them on the field as much as possible, even doing like 2-back sets and things like that. Gerald Green has impressed me. I mean, honestly, we talked about this on GATATalk, that every time it seems that he gets a chance, he shows out. He did that last year against, I think, South Alabama, if I remember right, with a long, like 68 yard run. And giving us new life when the offense was just, Bob DeBess was on the hot seat, ended up losing his job anyway. But yeah, that was kind of a sign of life for them. So we've got Jalen White too back there, who you probably don't hear his name much. He's still a younger guy. He actually led the nation in rushing in high school, set an Alabama high school state record with something like 3,500 rushing yards a senior year or something insane. And I was USA Today All-American. He's back there. Sam Kinnerson now, who's one of our quarterbacks, he's mainly wide receiver. Haven't really tried him out at running back yet, but we've got Amari Jones transfer from Tulane as well. He sat out the Louisiana game with an injury that he sustained against Arkansas, but he'll be back soon. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'd like to see Gerald Green get more touches. But I'd like to see everybody get more touches and maybe focus a little less on the passing and get more creative on, do some more option plays, which again, we haven't really got into that yet, but do some more true option plays, option pitches, and multiple back sets.
What's your realistic expectations for the rest of the year? Because the schedule does, at least to us as we see it, and we kind of follow the whole league. There are obviously huge landmines. We know what Coastal can do. We know the rivalry obviously there with Appalachian State.
Yeah.
And certainly what they're doing. Also the history of Georgia Southern knocking them off, in key spots there. The rivalry there, of course, with Georgia State as well, comes down to Paulson. What's kind of the realistic now that you have kind of an interim coach? Because again, as much as everyone would love pie in the sky 7-1, it's probably going to be going against what will be favored on certainly on paper.
Sure. So I would say if this change didn't just happen, right, we were probably looking at a 3 to 5 win season under Lunsford. I think 6-6 was pretty much our ceiling. And I think most fans, I think even Jared Benko, our AD, probably saw that. And yeah, so it was why kind of wait? Let's go ahead and make this change now. Again, Kevin Whitley hasn't coached a game yet. Let me see, get back to me after Arkansas State and let me see if there's differences, if there's better clock management, if it's more disciplined play, if maybe, some variations in the play calling. But yeah, I mean, I would say, depending on that, we're still probably a 3 to 5 win team. I think making a bowl game, I don't want to say winning the East, winning the Sun Belt Championship, that's more of a pipe dream now. I think depending on if the team can rally behind the interim coach, we could potentially get to 6-6 and get in a bowl. I would say that or 7 wins, would be, I think people would be ecstatic with that right now, which is sad, but yeah.
Well, Matt, we thank you for joining us and giving us the lowdown there on the Eagles. We appreciate it. Tell people how we can check out your work.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. So you can find us. It's GATATalk. It's GATATALK at GATATalk Podcast on all your social medias. GATATalk.com where you can find us and follow us. We're also on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all of that. So definitely come and check us out. And we're the only fan podcast out there. So you'll definitely hear different takes that you won't hear from Danny Reed and people associated with the university. We started back in 2018 when Coach Lunsford was his first year as full-time head coach. So it's me interesting. This is our first time kind of doing this through a coaching change, and we'll obviously help usher in the new coach. So definitely some changing, challenging, but also exciting times ahead.
Well, best of luck, Matt. I hope you lose miserably on Saturday, but win the rest of your games moving forward.
I appreciate that. I'm surprised you guys didn't ask about the option, but I'll let that one go.
No, we'll just go wait and see how that works out.
All right. All right. Thanks, guys.
So some crazy stats still around from the Sun Belt as we get ready to preview week 5. Opponents are just 19% converting against South Alabama. 19%.
That's incredible.
And if you would have asked me what is South Alabama's strength, I would not have told you defense. I would have said that they're a straight offensive team and a good enough defense to keep you in check.
You know what? I would have said the opposite. I always felt like South Alabama's offense was a little anemic, especially that run game. And then with Womack coming in with his defensive background, I kind of expect that South Alabama would bow up a little bit on defense. But, I was putting together my list of athletic directors for the Hal Razor Sunbelt Sheriff's Badge. And the athletic director for South Alabama is one of the 3 that came to the top. And simply because they're 3-0 and they played some fairly good opponents and they've got a brand new coach and a brand new attitude. I don't know if they're elite yet. We'll have to see. I think this game against, I guess we'll preview in a second, against Cajuns, will certainly establish that. But I like what I see so far with South Alabama.
So as we look forward to week 5, first game we got to look at ULM. 2-1 ULM travels to the undefeated, nationally ranked Coastal Carolina. Here's your great stat of it. No team has converted a 4th down conversion against ULM. Coastal is 5 for 5 on 4th down conversions. Something's got to give.
All right. Well, before Ben weighs in on this, I want to weigh in first. Yeah, I was actually quite appalled watching that UMass game. And then I kind of, with my appalled nature deepened thinking about this non-con that Coastal Carolina has played. They played 3 home games. They played really the bottom of the barrel, except for Buffalo, which they had a very tough time with. And so when I was putting together the FunBelt sheriff's badge list, I could not come up with Coastal Carolina. I feel like that non-con's a joke, and I really don't feel like they're adequately prepared to play a Sunbelt schedule. I don't think their non-con did them any favors. So I don't know if ULM comes into Conway and pulls what they did against Troy. We all know that Troy has trouble scoring points, and Coastal Carolina won't have trouble scoring points. I suspect that Coastal Carolina is going to win this game, but you're right about that spread, Dusty. I think it's too big. I don't think they cover.
Yeah, it was eye popping, right? You're seeing it and saying five touchdowns. It seems it's excessive. This isn't a winless ULM team from last year or the previous. And I think, again, there just seems to be something. It's like the CD skipping, right? There's something just not right specifically with Coastal. Extremely interested to see what it looks like for them this weekend. They're going to get punched in the mouth pretty good, I think, defensively. I mean, Dusty's been saying it for a few weeks. This ULM defense is legitimate. There's a lot of film certainly on Coastal right now. A lot of film on Grayson McCall, and see what he can and can't do well. He still is obviously super efficient running that offense, but you have a situation where they continue to ascend. I think they're still the highest they've ever been, or even the Sunbelt team has been ranked in the AP poll. I think I saw that note pop out from the Sunbelt office. So, interesting to see how they continue to handle success. And I mean, there's people that are telling them, hey, look, you win out, you keep doing this, you're going to be, in a New Year's Six poll. And at some point, these are 18 and 22-year-olds, and getting here how awesome you are. You may not practice as hard. You may not pay attention to film as hard. You may not listen to the coaches as hard. And again, this is not the ULM of old, as we've continued to say.
App State heads to Georgia State. Ben, give us your preview of that one. I think that App State just continues rolling on. They got the big win last week against Marshall. I think Georgia State is still going to be maybe having a little bit of a pity party from the Auburn game that, the Mountaineers just kind of roll.
Yeah, tough, really tough assignment, right? Coming off of a physical and emotional game on the road. Not only the coaches, but the players thought they were, kind of job there, that thought they played as well as they could. Also, App gets a couple extra days of prep time, basically, playing on that Thursday night on ESPN, which drew over 1 million viewers. So obviously good for the league there. But yeah, I mean, there's so many weapons there for App State you have to worry about. Chase Bryce, we know how well he plays, how strong. And I think the biggest difference too is, especially for looking at last year's result, kind of comparing that. It was a 5-point game final. App really couldn't move the ball. Neither could Georgia State, to be honest. Quarterback play was not great. But now you have App State's full complement of receivers back. That's going to be a problem. The Panther secondary has been shaky. Certainly in the non-conference play, but they have been very good against the run. And, as Coach Sean Elliott said in his presser on Monday, he knows everything about App State. He's an App State graduate. So he knows everyone on that sidelines. He knows Sean Clark really, really well. The two defenses are extremely similar. They run a variation basically of the old Nate Woody 3-4 attacking scheme. So very interested to see what that looks like. The weather's supposed to be spectacular for Saturday afternoon, but I agree with you. I mean, if I had to lean one way, it's certainly going to be App State, and 10-point favorite there. Other than last year, the games have been blowouts. So I'm very interested to see what the mindset is for the Panthers, and do like App State in the game.
Yeah, I look at this Panthers team, and I see a Panthers team that is coming off a win against Charlotte, a Panthers team that got robbed and cheated out of a win against Auburn. I don't know if there's a letdown coming in to coming against Appalachian State. And you can burn Appalachian State secondary. I've seen a couple games with them, and they're not quick. They're not the best secondary. So if you can find a way to pass, if you can get that passing game going, Georgia State has a real chance with this. I will say this, though. I feel like after 4 games, the most complete team in the Sun Belt is Appalachian State. They've played a great schedule. They've played tough. They seem on both sides of the ball pretty stout. Even though I said you can burn that secondary, it's still a good defense. And you're right, Ben. Nobody's running on them either. They've won close games. They've had blowout games. They're just a good, solid team. Georgia State finds a way to win this game. That is going to be a calling card or a trumpet sound for Georgia State in that team. But I really do think Appalachian State probably does pull that out.
Red Wolves go to Georgia Southern. I think the Red Wolves win it. I think there's just too much chaos going on right now in Statesboro for them to really know. That just amplifies the issues they had that probably got Lunsford in trouble to begin with. I have a hard time, though, when we had Matt on and he was talking about things going on in the program. I would love to be 28-21 over the past 4 years with 2 bowl wins. It's so interesting to hear the other side of the fence and how the expectations are. Maybe it was just me, but I've digressed.
Well, I'll tell you what.
They just don't like losing, fellas. I mean, that's what it comes to. They don't tolerate it at all. And it just is a mindset from, as I kind of mentioned with Matt, the old guard and the new guard. They don't do it. And they don't want to lose at home. They're embarrassed by losing, and they don't tolerate it. And I think it's very interesting. They've already had players jump in the portal. As we know, it's week 4. So this is, the week that guys can maintain their red shirt. Obviously suspending Gavin Adcock for, chugging that beer basically on the bus. I mean, he's a player. He plays for them. He's not a walk-on. He's a senior, defensive tackle that played snaps in that Louisiana game. You're removing him from the roster indefinitely. He came out with an apology already. I just don't know how good they are on the line of scrimmage. I don't know how good they are at the quarterback position. If you do slow the run there, they do have very good running backs, obviously. But if you slow the run at all, I think Arkansas State wins. And I just haven't – I'm not convinced they can stop Arkansas State.
Well, here's my thing about that bus incident. You would never see behavior like that on a well-run football team. You just wouldn't. Now, it might be a party thing to do. It might have been a crowd pleaser. The football team itself might have thought that was just radical. But quite frankly, a coach that has control over his team, that never even occurs to them to do something like that. I've seen teams with player coaches, and that's usually what happens. Everything gets lax. People don't practice as hard. They don't practice as long. They think, coach is just, coach's going to let us out early. We're going to have some beers or whatever. And pretty soon you get a 1-3 record like Georgia Southern has. And I can feel like it's been more like the Georgia Southern itself. It just seems to be sort of corroding in a way when it comes to that winner's mentality. They don't seem to have it right now. So I agree with Matt on that. Now, Dusty, I agree. 28-21 or whatever it was, 3 bowl games. You can't really argue with that. I don't know what they expect out of Georgia Southern, but obviously they expect more than what they have. In my review, my review for the game, I said both teams are one-dimensional. Both teams are dysfunctional right now. The dysfunction, though, in Statesboro is a little deeper than it is in Jonesboro, and I think Arkansas State actually does pick up their first conference win of the season.
Sunbelt West Showdown. Louisiana Lafayette goes to Mobile to play the Jaguars. I don't have a pick in that game because I think that they are almost one and the same team. But the winner of that, I think, is your Sunbelt West champion. Yes, I'm claiming them this early.
Woo! That is a big statement there, Hoss. I like that, Dusty. You know what? And you could be right. To come to think of it. It is really hard to take a look at the South Alabama team and determine whether or not they're a great team or not. They haven't blown anybody out. They haven't really They've played some okay programs, but they haven't shown demonstrated this sort of domination. But neither has the Cajuns, for that matter. They came up against Georgia Southern, admittedly probably a desperate team looking to turn their fortunes around, and probably played the best they could possibly play. But the Cajuns haven't really looked that good this year, in my opinion. So one of these teams is going to have to establish itself on Saturday. And I have a feeling it might be this young upstart South Alabama team. I'm going to put my chips on Alabama. South Alabama, not Alabama.
Yeah, chips on Alabama is always a good idea. I'm intrigued by this game a ton too. We've bragged obviously, about Jake Bentley and his ability to come out and win. But I mean, Kane Womack he's put a game plan together, and they're a salty defense, and the Cajuns can be had. There are mistakes there. I think Georgia Southern laid that groundwork out for that, and I think again you've got some weapons there in Tolbert. You can take some shots. I think the Cajuns defense is good, so maybe not great. I think honestly it's going to be one of the games of the weekend, certainly to watch. With no rooting interest on my part, just to see, all right, what do we learn coming out of it?
There's only one non-conference game. Troy travels to South Carolina this week. I think this is a statement game for Troy, and I think that they can win it. If they lose, though, I think they're done for the year. But I do think that they do somehow pull out this win.
I agree with about half of what you say. I agree that it is a statement game, and it would be if they lose, Troy is done for the season. I don't think Troy wins. I don't even know anything about South Carolina, to tell you the truth.
They're the Gamecocks.
I've heard
that the SEC. Can't confirm that.
I know that they're from the East Coast. I don't know how good they are, but I do know there is something deeply, 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 profoundly wrong with that Troy offense right now. I don't know what it is. I couldn't put my finger on it, but they can't seem to score points. Ben pointed it out in our podcast last week. They're scoring 19 points a game. They couldn't score that against ULM. They only scored 16. There is something wrong with Troy and Chip Lindsey. And you used to look at Troy and go, that's a team that's going to score at least 30 on you every week. And now they can't even break 20. So I don't really see them having a chance against South Carolina, simply because I don't think they have enough points in the bag. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. We've seen Troy make some great stands against some more privileged teams out there. I just don't think it happens this Saturday.
Yeah, I think the stat that really jumped out at me looking at Troy, they're only averaging 2.6 yards per carry on the ground. They're an extremely one-dimensional team. Kamani Vidal, had a tremendous freshman season. Was one of the best running backs, honestly, freshman running backs in the nation. Comes back this season, not doing a whole lot. So is it the offensive line? Is it the running game? Is it the play calling? That's on Chip Lindsey. He's supposed to be the offensive guru there. He's coached in the SEC, so he obviously knows a little bit about what South Carolina is going to be about. But it still gave me pause when South Carolina was only a touchdown favorite in that game. It tells me a little something. It may be close. It would be certainly a good victory. Obviously, we know, South Carolina's not very good. They finally have their graduate assistant quarterback back to the bench, maybe back to the coaching booth there. So Luke Doty's back, but they have a salty defense. But yeah. If Troy's one-dimensional, it's going to be a long afternoon there at Williams-Brice.
Guys, we've talked all along the rumors of conference realignment going on. I hate to tell you all this, ULM's leaving for Conference USA. Well, it's for beach volleyball, but they did leave.
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
I heard Georgia State was doing
Georgia State's in Conference USA too.
And Coastal Carolina, that's your actual Sunbelt teams there that did make that plunge. Not a big deal, but it's kind of funny when you see the graphics of a ULM logo next to Conference USA. I'm sure Georgia State and everyone else did the same. Somebody didn't read it and were panicking and in full just breakdown. And I hope, honestly, it was Louisiana Tech fan seeing that ULM is now in Conference USA.
I saw that. By the way, okay, forgive my ignorance because I don't know much about beach volleyball. But what conference were you guys in before that? It was a FunBelt conference, right? Was it something else?
I couldn't tell you what conference we were in.
Yeah, so basically there was like a kind of a conglomeration. And I think there's still only about 40 programs, 45, 50 programs that play beach volleyball at this point. And you kind of have a concentration. You have some that are in the South, and of course the West is very, very strong. It's always tough to get matches, right? Because you're trying to find locally. I think the state of Georgia, I believe Mercer University has a team. But I actually went to school with the coach Beth Van Fleet. Her and I took classes together at GSU. So she's a former AVP star. But yes, I am a name dropper. Shout out to Coach Van Fleet and her crew. But I will tell you, if you get a chance to go to a beach volleyball match, I highly recommend it. It moves very, very fast. You have multiple courts, and a lot of talented individuals there. And because, hey, we talk about the transfer rule in football and basketball, beach volleyball, you can go and transfer and be eligible immediately no matter what. So there are programs that load up with All-American candidates every single year. Pretty interesting. And again, a lot of fun to watch. Go out there with your favorite beverage there, Jeremy. You could grab a case of Old Duels and watch the ladies.
Well, I'll have to admit, our equivalent of beach volleyball to you guys would be our bowling team. And it would probably be much more exciting to watch beach volleyball, although I get really stoked for Red Wolves bowling. So I'll tell you what, I'll watch a ULM, a Warhawks, or a Panthers beach volleyball game someday. If you guys come out to the bowling alley someday, watch those Red Wolves knock down a few pins.
And by the way, you asked what conference we were in. It was the Coastal Collegiate Sports Association.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, of course.
So, I mean,
I don't have a shirt or anything that says that.
No, you need a hat.
I have a tattoo of it.
Oh, that's perfect. But all right, have we heard any realignment news though? The big news that I've heard just recently is that it sounds like the Americans going to pull that trigger on Colorado State and Air Force. What does that mean for the Sun Belt? It kind of means that we can just pick who we want, right?
I definitely think that we're in the driver's seat, but I don't think that Keith Gill and company want to jump the gun, because why would you want to? I know we're going to get beat up on our El Paso listeners, but why would you pick El Paso if you have a chance to get Southern Miss or UAB because they're looking to jump ship or they're, available to join the Sun Belt? So I think you sit tight, you kind of let that first wave shake through, and then you jump.
Yeah, with the reporting today, specifically from Brett McMurphy Stadium, talks specifically about Colorado State and Air Force. They're expected to accept their invite probably this week. Could be announced as early as next week. Just how many more does the AAC add, if any? Then obviously, what is the reaction specifically? There's a whole lot of Southern Miss smoke. We know how the fans, our friends in Huntington, West Virginia, they are an excitable bunch. Anytime Sunbelt gets mentioned, they want to be there. And also very interested to see, what UAB does. Obviously, there's just a whole lot of swirling. And, the fun part about it is we'll probably have an answer to that question next Tuesday when we're on the podcast, boys.
Yeah. Speaking of next week, today was the first day of college basketball's practices. So we'll start cranking out college basketball previews next week. Troy Scott Cross will join us. I think we're working on getting Georgia State's coach in on the podcast as well. I'm excited, guys. This is where it starts getting real, is when basketball season happens and football. Then you have the overlap of basketball, baseball. It's nonstop chaos, and I love it.
I want to remind you too that there's also overlap with bowling. So that kind of comes in during the winter time, and then there's sort of a spring season. So if you guys want me to get some bowlers on the podcast, you let me know. Okay, I've got sort of an in on that.
We're all inclusive here, Jeremy. We respect the bowlers.
Okay, thank you very much.
And on that note, we go with our parting shots, promos, and everything else. Fire away there, Ben.
Sure. PantherTalk.com has been been fun. As you mentioned, the first day of basketball practice for head coach Rob Lanier in his third season, their final season at the venerable Georgia State Sports Arena in downtown Atlanta. The Panthers moved to a new $90 million convocation center. So we were talking to him today, learned a whole lot about the squad, returned all 5 starters and 9 of 11 of their top players, as well as 5 new recruits including former 4-star recruit Jordan Rawls from Western Kentucky. So he's excited, looking forward to it. And as you mentioned, practice is underway, looking forward to a big non-conference. And we have that covered. Of course, App State covered. We never stop talking about recruiting because recruiting never stops. And looking forward to another game day on Saturday and see the Panthers at home.
Jeremy, fire away.
HalRazor.com has announced its first early front runners for the FunBelt Sheriff's Badge, which goes to the intrepid FunBelt athletic director who has laid down the law for other FunBelt football programs to follow. The 3 leading candidates after 4 games is Doug Gillen from Appalachian State, Joel Erdman from South Alabama, and Scott McDonald out of ULM. We're all excited about Scott McDonald, what he has done for this Warhawks program. There was a lot of talk about maybe the Warhawks should sort of reevaluate the entire state of the program, and they did. They said, let's bring in Terry Bowden. Let's go ahead and make some noise in the Sun Belt, and they have. They come into the Sun Belt conference play 1-0, just like their friends Louisiana Lafayette. And so, yeah, very good start by Scott McDonald and those other 2 guys.
My parting shot, guys, I don't know about your school, but even going back to Monroe last week, you cannot find any gear that you actually want to be seen out in public wearing for your school. When is that going to change? I don't want a pink ULM shirt. I want a maroon shirt. And then when I wash it, it becomes pink. Help me out with this, guys. Whoever is listening to this that can help with that, that's who we need.
Oh, man, you know what? We're lucky at Arkansas State. We have some pretty handsome merchandise, so I'm pretty happy with the selection. I am upset that you cannot find gorgeous ULM Warhawks merchandise easily available at your local Walmart or Costco or whatever. It should be readily available, especially there in Monroe. And let's face it, the logo's good logo. The colors are good colors. They're pretty handsome. So we need to shake down some vendors and see. All right, I'll tell you what. Here's what I had to do, Dusty. I don't take all credit for this, but I did do a lot of complaining about 10 years ago on the Twitter platform about the lack of availability of Red Wolves merchandise, not just in the state of Arkansas, which was tragic, but also in the city of Jonesboro, which was a shame. Within that 10 years of just complaining and crying and bitching about the whole thing, now we've got really good options for it. So I think what you need to do, Dusty, is just be loud. Get out there and complain endlessly. When you write a tweet about it, make sure you tag Dick's Sporting Goods or Walmart or whomever that you need to tag and shame them into supporting Monroe and its brilliant school, ULM.
And on the flip side of that, people got to buy it when it's there. I mean, there's a reason. I'm sure that you go to Walmart and you can get a true, purple and gold shirt and everything else. People got to buy it.
You know what? If you win more games like you did against Troy, then people are going to buy that stuff.
My statement before the season, double the wins. Mission accomplished. Thank you and good night.
Good work, Dusty.
Other than that, guys, while I was in Monroe, a good compliment to y'all that I'll leave y'all with.
Okay.
People love the show. They were coming up to me, talking to me about the show more so than about my website, ULM recruiting, or anything else. As I walked to the Grove, everyone was like, the podcast is great. Podcast is great. It's awesome. Awesome. Keep it up. Keep it up. So there you are, Jeremy. I can see your head swelling.
I'm sure it's all me and not you other guys. So I will be taking a deeper cut of the profits from now on.
I like it. All right, guys, that's all we got for you. We'll do it again next week. And as always, any kind of emergency episodes could drop if there's any kind of conference realignment. Jeremy, decides that he's going to go rogue and he's going to start a Southland Conference podcast. You never know what's going to happen with that guy.
I definitely have it in the works. We'll see if it ever comes to fruition.